Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki don open in-house workshop for procurement department for ministries. E tok say no be something wey im go normally do, but as the matter na serious thing wey concern government, im must chook mouth sake of say na reform process. Obaseki come tok say make senior government officials take the process of procurement serious, say dem dey very fortunate sake of say na Edo be the first state to adopt procurement and promulgate law to support the procurement process.
Ordinarily, I won't come in to open an in-house workshop of this nature, but I thought that this is very, very important to what we're doing in government, our reform process, that I have to be here to lend my voice and perhaps alert most of you senior government officials on the need for us to take the process of procurement very, very seriously. Being one of the first states to have adopted procurement and promulgated a law to support our procurement process, and have gone further to ensure that we have an e-procurement process in place. Why is procurement important for government, particularly now? You all know, you'll agree with me, that the common parlance, reason why people seek public office, that's politicians, senior government officials, they feel that once we get into government, we've made it. And government is for those people in government. And what do they mean? It means that they've seen themselves or seen ourselves as having an undue advantage because of our responsibility to manage public finances or public goods. That's the common parlance. So when somebody gets appointed, the people throw parties, there are all sorts of congratulatory messages because people feel, your time have come. This is the time for you to now make it. You're not going to suffer again, not even your children or grandchildren. What does it mean? It means that with the responsibility you now have, you're going to take advantage of it. And how is this advantage usually taken in government service? Is through the procurement process, largely. Because we fail to realize that we are what you call a fiduciary. We are holding public trust. Taxpayers' revenues are appropriated and put under our care to purchase and procure goods and services. That process of procuring, using monies that have been put under our care to obtain or procure goods and services for the generality of our people, is that process being done right or being abused? We've done fairly well in Edo, but at least relatively better than most states, because we are beginning to see that we're getting more value from what we're spending, particularly our capital spend, but even now what we're spending on recurrent.
Obaseki come tok say workshop like this dey important sake of say e go remind the senior officials wetin dem suppose do and how dem suppose behave so the system no go suffer. Obaseki come advise dem make dem go read the procurement law 2020 sake of say I no go fit save any senior public officer wey dem catch dey do anyhow.
This workshop is essentially to remind us of a few things. That the process of procurement is very, very important for us in government, because it's about obtaining value for the money that is put under our care. And you'll begin to see in Edo that we're improving the value retention. We're seeing better quality works being done, roads, public buildings. That tells you that something is going on right in our procurement process. But that is not to say that the bad habits of the past are still not present with us. And that's why a workshop like this is very, very important and timely to remind us that there are certain expectations of us, and there's a certain way we're expected to behave. And if we don't, the system suffers. We don't get the full value of what we're supposed to receive. But also, more importantly, that we have now passed that stage where you can just do it and get away with it. There are repercussions, and there are legal repercussions. There are a few people who are being investigated now who are, unfortunately, will have to be tried. Senior public officers for things like this. And that is going to be the way going forward. It's not an issue or question of begging. It's not an issue of question of if somebody doesn't like me. When you go against the provisions of the Procurement Act, you are actually doing something criminal, and it's justiciable. So, for those of you who haven't read that law, please, it's important that you go and read our Procurement Law 2020. So that you don't say, I didn't know. We're also not complying with the law as it should be. And if you don't comply with the law, they say ignorance is not an excuse. You're culpable.
Governor Obaseki comes to talk say Edo State get one of the strongest procurement agency and practitioners for Nigeria, where they make people waka come from different states just to come learn the process.
We're fortunate in Edo that because we have been focusing on procurement for over 10 years, I believe we have one of the strongest procurement agencies in the country today. And you're aware that people come from other states to come and understudy our procurement systems in Edo. So we have a very strong agency. We have strong practitioners who know what to do and what they are doing. We therefore will need to now make sure that we do what we need to do because we know what to do, right? If we didn't know, it's a different matter. We know, and we know people who know, so that even if we don't know, there are people we can go to. They're just a call away to let us know. I also want to advise that we are trying to make sure that we have a full cycle in terms of our process. So the eGov platform we've put in place is all part of that reform process of our civil service and our public services. What are we trying to achieve? We're trying to ensure that we deliver services promptly to our citizens. And when we delay things, particularly procurement, we increase the costs significantly for government. There's a situation I'm dealing with now, which leaves me every time I think about it, I'm really upset. Because as of last year, I called the agency, I said, look, we need to award these contracts. We need to, because I can see the Naira devaluing in a few months' time. I saw it, I could tell. I mean, I was pleading, begging, cajoling, and all sorts of in-house fights and some arguments. Now we are awarding the contracts. We're awarding that. We're going to undertake that project at 2.5 times the cost we should have done if we did it the right time. Normally, where I come from in the private sector, those people, everybody involved should lose their jobs. Because the delay was just unwarranted. Oh yes, you know, it's easy to come up with all sorts of bureaucratic arguments. Oh, no, it's not me, it's not this. No. The chief executive officer and the chief accounting officers, that's the honorable commissioner and the permanent secretaries, and maybe the director in charge, are supposed to be held culpable. So on a final note, just note that You are public officers who have been vested with public trust. The word is trust. Do not breach the trust. Don't betray the trust. When you do not adhere to the procurement principles and practices, you are breaching that trust. But going forward, there are consequences. And unfortunately, the bad news is that there will be prosecution. It is just not about administrative actions now. There will be legal consequences because you are in breach of a law.
This na the Ogbonge news wey TMC TV carry come give una. Make una not forget say your PVC na your power for this year election. A Carter, Ojesele, TMC TV News, Benin.